takes. I'm so ready for football, man.
Yeah, no more talk on a certain other podcast, Falcon Central, about the Falcons being a better team than the Patriots. Hi guys, we won. We have the ring. But anyways, you said it. Patriots and Jaguars. They're guys hitting guys that aren't on their team, and we're just going to get right into it. This week has been a big week of joint practices. The Patriots and Jaguars went at it pretty good. These two teams went full pads, both days of joint practices. They did a walkthrough today before the game, but these joint practices, they were something else, Brian. I got to tell you, I don't know if you got a chance to watch any of it, but the Patriots and Jaguars, they went after it pretty good.
Yeah, and from everything I saw, it was kind of a dominating performance from the Patriots' point of view and from the Patriots media. I didn't have a chance to see any of it, obviously, but I dove pretty deep into the reports and made a pretty comprehensive list. My boss at work most likely wasn't too thrilled with my Twitter usage the last couple days, but
he understands it's football season,
right? And the amount of content that the Patriots fans have available to them, especially with a big event like joint practices, it's so great. You get so much breakdowns in every little matchup, and we'll talk about it obviously. But for me, the big standout was Stephon Gilmore and Malcolm Butler showing out. I know Malcolm was a little up and down, but a lot of good talk about the guy that got that big chunk of change from Bill Belichick this offseason. So,
yeah, and so you mentioned the content there. A little shout out to some guys that I know, some guys I've worked with: Matt Smith, Dave Mondillo, Fred Kirsch, Andy Hart, Paul Perillo, Eric Salvino. Awesome. The amount of content these guys put out is insane. Bob Sosie's putting out stuff every day. Friend of the show, as are Paul and Andy and Eric. But yeah, so, it's funny. The Patriots went out and did exactly what you thought they would do, but they did it shorthanded. They went out this week, and they took it to the Jaguars. And when you talk about standouts in this joint practice session, it was Tom Brady, and it was Brandon Cooks. The best possible thing you could see. Oh, and another guy you might have heard of him, Rob Gronkowski. Yeah. Gronkowski had 7 touchdowns on 11 catches in Tuesday's practice. Just let that sink in for a second. I don't care if it's the Jaguars. I don't care if he's playing, the Littleton Mighty Mites football team. 7 touchdowns and 11 catches is insane. Rob Gronkowski and Brandon Cooks dominated this Jaguars defense. That's a halfway decent young defense. They're not great, but they're a building team. They're a team that, they're kind of on the rise. You have Dante Fowler. You have Jalen Ramsey, you have all these good young pieces that are supposed to be building, and the Patriots made them look foolish throughout a majority of this joint session.
Yeah, you're right. Gronk, 7 touchdowns and however many, reps. It's, you'd be hard pressed to get that many touchdowns in, the Rob Gronkowski family reunion flag football game, But yeah, you're right. With the defense, with the personnel that Jacksonville has out there, it reminds me a little bit of the way they're building of New England's defense, where they're investing heavily on the interior defensive line, like we see New England do. Obviously, not to the extent that Jacksonville has, given that they've gone out and invested in free agents like Malik Jackson and our guy Calais Campbell. I know you and I are both big fans, but they've got young guys. Like you brought up Fowler, who obviously is showing some maturity issues, but the guy's still
get thrown out of a joint practice is a bad look.
Right. I mean, the guy's a freak athlete, and it's just not, he's not putting it all together. But my favorite guy to watch probably on their entire defense is Telvin Smith. He's going to be a guy that everybody's going to covet. They're going to have to they're going to probably lock him down coming up next offseason. But they build it kind of in that same way that the Patriots have, with that strong secondary and investing a lot of resources. AJ Boye, Tashawn Gibson, Barry Church at safety, and then obviously Jalen Ramsey, who was on PUP. We didn't get to see him this week, but yeah, it didn't matter who was out there. Brandon Cooks, Rob Gronkowski, Tom Brady. It's going to be special, man. It's going to be really, really special this year, and it starts tomorrow night. So,
It does. And while we're giving our look back here, I want to do a little exercise we're going to do on game days where we call out players, one good, one bad. And let's start with the positive stuff. Let's get your good call out for the week of joint practice between the Patriots and the Jaguars.
Yeah, for me, it's Stephon Gilmore. Like I said, to open the show, Stephon Gilmore, man, with all that money they gave him in the offseason, you want him to come in, and he's got some history with Allen Robinson. John, and their game in London from a couple of years ago. Allen Robinson's a tough matchup, for any corner. And he held his own. You heard his name come up a lot, and he played with a lot of fire, a lot of intensity. Like we've seen all camp, regardless of how his reps have gone, there has been no question about his preparation and his fire. All good things, man, and you can see why the Patriots invested in a guy like him. You know what you're getting with him, and he's obviously putting in the work, and he's the kind of player that they want back there to start in the Patriots defense. So.
The combination is tremendous. Yeah, so Gilmore's been really good. Butler had a bit of an up and down week, but right. I would say he was good as well. Gilmore stood up that much further, though, and he's doing what he was supposed to do coming in here. He's been a very solid player. He's been a guy who, I've been very skeptical of. I said he's not a true number one when they signed him, and I'm going to stick to that until he shows me further. Training camp's been a good sign so far. He locked down Allen Robinson. He had a couple of really good pass breakups. I want to see him against a good quarterback, personally, before I crown him. But throughout training camp, he showed me a lot. He's done very good against Tom Brady, against Jimmy Garoppolo. He's been a really good addition to the Patriots' defense. I'm going to go to the other side of the ball, a guy who really struggled in the minicamps, and we talked about him last week, and that was Dwayne Allen. And Allen hasn't been spectacular during these joint practices, but what he has been is consistent. The knock on him was a lot of he can't block. He's only a red zone threat. He's limited athletically. And some of those things are true, but he's been out there really working hard on his blocking ability, and he's been making plays in the middle of the field. It seems, obviously Gronkowski is dominating, but it seems like he has a good rapport with Tom Brady. And, what we're trying to do is go outside for folks who are going to be sending it in on Twitter and on Facebook Live. We're trying to go outside of Brady, Cooks, Gronkowski. The obvious guys that everyone's been talking about. We're trying to get a little bit outside of that. So Moore and Dwayne Allen are our positive players. Brian, let's go negative here. Who are you calling out?
I'm calling out your guy, Austin Carr. I know no one likes kicking a guy when he's a UDFA, but hey, this is the greatest receiver of all time coming into training camp, according to the likes of yourself and many past co-hosts.
Whoa! The greatest of all time.
Yeah,
I believe I had him cut on every roster projection I've had.
But I get roasted on the no UDFAs are making this roster, and everybody crowns this Austin Carr guy. And yes, did he have a great? He had a fantastic opening couple days. But as they alluded to on PFW, we heard him a couple times this week. His name brought up. He had a tough time getting open, creating separation, and it's the reason you have that much production and still don't get drafted. Is because of things like that. If you're not creating separation in the NFL, if you can't get open, you don't serve much of a purpose, and it's tough to get reps that way. And he's kind of fallen off a cliff as far as getting open. And you kind of have to nitpick if we're not talking about guys with injuries like Mike Gillislee and things like that. I'm going to go Austin Carr.
All right, and before we get to our other negative, believes my dig reached the Falcon Central Radio podcast. Apparently, Brian Harrington has Scott Karasik with him, co-host of the Falcon Central Radio. Well, not physically with you, but... All right, good. Yes, so overrated.
Let's have a chat. I can't wait to hear this. Yeah, I mean, I already, I'm just, it's just.
Hello?
All right, folks. So Brian brought him in. I'll bring him in officially here. We're going to bring on Scott Karasik, co-host of Falcon Central Radio. You can hear that on Tuesday nights at 9:30 p.m. on Facebook Live on Pro Football Central. You can catch the podcast there. Scott, what's going on, bud?
Not much. What's going on with y'all?
You know, just talking Patriots and Jaguars, but we heard that you wanted to talk some Patriots and some Tom Brady with us after last night.
Oh, you mean about how Tom Brady's overrated?
So define overrated to me, because it seems that you have a quarterback that I love personally. You know, I met him when he played at Boston College. I met him during his time with the Falcons. And he has one MVP and no Super Bowl rings. So how are you defining overrated when Tom Brady's had a much better career?
People listing him as the greatest of all time as if, you know, Marino and Montana, you know, as if they didn't exist.
Oh, my God.
That kind of
So you're
stuff.
hurting yourself with Marino. Marino could never elevate a team to a Super Bowl.
Marino was arguably the best pure passer the league has ever seen.
Right,
But
I
his
agree with you on that,
GM
but
was
that's not
shit.
all that there is to a quarterback, is
His
there?
GM was absolute shit. If he would have gotten him the targets and the running back he needed, that team would have won multiple Super Bowls.
You know what? You know who he needed? He needed Antoine Smith. That's what he needed. Hey, Scott, it's Brian Phillips. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Nice to meet you.
So tell me, I mean, what running back would have put Dan Marino over the top? You know, give me some ideas, some personnel. You know, maybe did he need receivers like David Patton or David Gibbons or a tight end like Jermaine Wiggins? Or, I mean, tell me, who would you have put with Dan Marino to prove your point here?
Oh, I love how you're listing guys that were for Brady's first Super Bowl when that team was carried by that defense.
Oh yeah, there's no question about it. The first three Super Bowls, you know, were built around a solid defense. That's, you know, for sure. But if we want to throw away those three Super Bowls and completely erase that entire era, that's fine. Let's move on. We have two Super Bowls to work with, two other Super Bowl appearances to work with, some record-setting MVP seasons with with second Randy Moss came in. We kind of saw what happens when you give Tom Brady a weapon like that, a Julio Jones type of talent. You know, where did Dan Marino go wrong then? So it's just he was just screwed from the start with no personnel.
He never had any of those additional greats that Montana had. He never had the Roger Craigs or the Jerry Rices or those kind of people in the world.
So you're not putting you're not putting Joe Montana ahead of Tom Brady then, because that's what I thought you had.
Oh no, I am.
Really?
Because he played in an era where they had to completely change offenses to attack the 46 defenses that were in that era, with the press corners and just the overall blitzing schemes. He had to completely change the game. Montana changed the game.
Did Montana change the game, or did Bill Walsh change the game
they
by
won 4
introducing
Super
him to
Bowls.
the West Coast offense? And look,
If Bill Walsh didn't have Joe Montana, the West Coast offense wouldn't have been what it was.
Yeah,
He needed a quarterback that was smart, that could pick apart teams.
117 games with it. He won 117 games. Tom Brady's won 210. I think the argument is over right there. I'm sorry. It's not even. It's not the same stratosphere. We're not talking about the same game here.
Well, you realize football is a team sport, right?
Yeah, but see, you can't throw that out there because if it was purely a team sport, teams wouldn't be bending over backwards to get guys like Kirk Cousins, and Derek Carr wouldn't be making $25 million a year. Matt Stafford's about to get $30 million a year because if they get rid of Matt Stafford, their team goes back into exactly where the Lions have been since 1955. So you can't give me the quarterback doesn't matter.
And the counter to that is the Bengals have made the playoffs for like 5 straight seasons with Andy Dalton at quarterback.
Yeah, and Andy Dalton's a top 20 quarterback, but he's not a top 10 quarterback. So until you have that
he's barely serviceable.
And that's exactly what Matt Ryan's
been. A great quarterback. And I'm not saying Brady sucks. I'm just saying I don't think he's as good as Joe Montana is.
I can't have I don't understand the conversation about how it's. I don't see how it's not Peyton Manning, Tom Brady if we're having the conversation. Matt, what are your thoughts, Matt?
Well, I think that when you look at Peyton Manning, obviously he had all the stats, he had all those ridiculous offenses, and he had to carry a lot of his teams. But I mean, I'm a big Montana fan. I'm going to put that out there.
But here's the way I look at it: if you're going to throw Peyton Manning in it, you have to throw Drew Brees in it too. And that's coming from a Falcons fan about a Saints quarterback.
Okay, that takes a lot.
Look at how many straight seasons. Look at how many straight seasons Brees has had with over 5,000 yards.
But 5,000 yards isn't the number changes around because 5,000 yards in offense that does not run the ball is different. Matt Stafford threw for 5,000 yards. Are you saying he's at all even good?
Has he done it 5 times? Has he done it 5 times? If the Saints put any semblance of a defense on that field with Drew Brees as their quarterback, they win the division. And I hate saying that because
let me ask you something about when Tom Brady. All right, you're saying Tom Brady.
That's how good Brees is.
If there was any semblance of a defense, what about when he carried a team to the Super Bowl? And granted, yes, they lost. But what about when he carried a team to the Super Bowl that had Julian Edelman playing cornerback and Matt Slater playing safety? It was statistically, to that point in NFL history, the single worst defense in NFL history.
And they didn't win.
But he carried them to the
their defense sucked.
Yes,
yeah, and then he couldn't score. And then he couldn't score more than 17 points.
How many points did Matt Ryan score in his second Super Bowl?
He hasn't been to one yet.
Okay, so what are we talking? Like he's a great quarterback, or is it just that you just hate Tom Brady because
I'm not even bringing up Matt Ryan. I'm not even bringing up Matt Ryan.
So Tom Brady is what? So where is Tom Brady on your list? 3rd or 4th? All time.
I'd have him at 3rd. I'd have Marino 2nd. I'd have Montana 1.
Oh my God. Okay, so where's Dan Fouts on your list? I mean, is that what we're talking about now? We're talking about passing yards and changing and guys that are changing, generational type talent. Joe Montana did nothing spectacularly. There's a reason he was a 4th-round draft pick. I mean, I don't understand the love.
I can hop in a little bit. Joe Montana is without a doubt in my mind the 2nd best quarterback of all time.
No. It's not even close. He's not. No, it's Peyton Manning, guys. You're wrong. You guys are wrong.
Didn't you also think that? Didn't you? Hold on. Didn't you also think that Walter Payton was going to be undrafted if he was in today's?
Oh no.
We've gone over this one a time or two, but yeah, if Walter Payton was coming out,
if you hold on, no. Walter Payton, worst case for Walter Payton, if he was coming out today, would be a top 20 pick, depending on needs. And that's just because the league has devalued running back so much.
I mean, the point of the entire take back then was coming from the small school and being he was not a prototypical size running back. He was 2 inches shorter and 15 pounds lighter than any of your standard running backs in last year's NFL Combine. We don't have a 40 time on him. Obviously, we could go off of grainy YouTube videos and him playing against defensive lines that are stacked with 250-pound guys that barely make a roster these days. But yeah, he was a great player, but it's. Do I want to revise my statement and say, yeah, he'd be taken in the later round? Sure, but I mean, we have no way of knowing. And today's game is.
He was so good. They named the small school Division I AA Offensive Player of the Year award after him. It wasn't like he was some schmuck.
Yeah,
he was a great football player when he came out.
I don't understand why people can't separate generations like they need to be separated. The game back then was a different game than it is today. The athletes today are ridiculous. I mean, we all see it. We see the training regimens and the size of all the players now. The game is just it's the trajectory of sports, all sports. We see it in the game of golf.
But the one position that hasn't changed since the 80s in terms of size, speed, all that, where it doesn't matter how big you are, how tall you are, is running back. Almost all of the great running backs are in that 5'8" to 5'11" range. Almost all of them. Walter Payton's 5'10".
Ezekiel
was 200 pounds, yeah.
And last year,
and in today's game, with today's modern strength,
go back to
and in today's game, with today's modern strength,
20 pounds, Scott. You're finding guys that if they're 220 pounds, they're Franco Harris, they're playing fullback, they're getting direct dives, they're John Riggins running 5 flat 40s. You know, they weren't 200.
And today you've got guys like Devontae Freeman who weigh 200 pounds and are 5'6" out there running for 1,000 yards. Size isn't ever going to be an issue at the running back position. It's never going to be an issue. If we had running backs today that could take let's just look at not even his best year. He had 53 catches for 607 yards as a running back in the 80s. He changed the position to where they had to be dual threats. He's one of the few guys that has over 22,000 yards from scrimmage. 21,000 yards from scrimmage. The dude is one of the best football players, period, of all time. And the thing is, he's not even the best running back of all time. But he still would have gone.
They're not playing the same level of talent they're seeing now. It's not the same game. We have to keep it separate. I mean, I don't understand the comparison between guys in the past.
You're arguing for something that doesn't make logical sense. You're arguing that Walter Payton, one of the greatest running backs of all time, would just be nothing today. That's just not even true. Scott, he may not be the guy who averaged 1,600 yards.
No, how do you know this? Did you go back and check the heights and weights of all the front sevens that he played against back then? I did, and they're about 25 pounds less per player.
running back itself is a position that is not based on your offensive line, the front seven, and all that. What made him great was his vision. What made him great was his ability to hold on to the damn ball. That doesn't change from generation to generation to generation. From Walter Payton to LaDainian Tomlinson to Shady McCoy, that is one thing that is a constant in all those guys.
Running against guys, defensive tackles that are 260 pounds, and his guards are getting on guys that are 260 pounds. I'm sorry, it's a different game, man. It's not the same game.
He's not going to... But the thing is, Adrian Peterson will never, ever... If a team is blocking right, Adrian Peterson should never have to even touch a defensive tackle if his guards are doing it right. And the guards that same era were the same size as the defensive tackle.
You can't compare the eras. That's why it doesn't make logical sense. And to compare the two eras and put one player in the other era is what doesn't make sense. And why it shouldn't be, why it can't be an argument, because they have to be kept separate. That's what I'm saying. And you're trying to force Walter Payton into today's game or today's backs into the old game. It doesn't make sense. They're not the same game anymore. It's just not. But if that's how you want to deflect your awful quarterback list that we still need to talk about, because I don't understand how Peyton Manning's not in your top 5 quarterbacks. I mean,
I only listed my top 3.
Okay, so where's Peyton?
So,
your list is trash.
He'd be at 5.
Where's Dan Fouts? I gotta know where Dan Fouts is on the list.
Dude, Dan Fouts is somewhere in the 20s. I don't even give a shit about Dan Fouts.
Man, Dan Fouts, based on all your logic and all your generational, he's changing the way it's done. Dan Fouts is on the cutting edge, man. You're going to want Dan Fouts higher on your list based on your qualifications, and that wins don't matter, and that it's about stats and changing the game. Dan Fouts is on the forefront of that, brother. Why not higher?
Because I've never seen a game Dan Fouts played. So all I have are stats.
All right, on that, I'm gonna hop in here and I'm gonna bring this to an end here, guys. We got some Patriots stuff to talk about. Scott, I appreciate you coming on, bud. We disagree, but we disagree. But Brian, Scott, you guys can battle set on Twitter. Scott, what's your Twitter handle?
Carasik S. CARASIK-S.
Brian, yours? Brian, your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle?
Yep, for the people here.
@bphillips_pp. So,
top 5 quarterback conversation and greatest running back of all time conversation. If you want to see him there. Scott, before we let you go, give me some Falcons predictions. What's their record in 10 seconds or less?
12-4. I do think they go up there and beat the Patriots. I know it's going to get some riling up from Phillips over there, but I think they go up there and I think they knock the crap out of the Patriots this year, especially if Poe and that defensive line stay healthy.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I have it too. As the Falcons come up here and beat the Patriots, that's one of my 2 losses for the Patriots. But let's just hope that they're never up 28-3 again in the Super Bowl. And with that, we're going to get back into the Patriots and Jaguars. Bye, Scott.
Oi.
All right. So that was Scott Karasik, and my goodness, you guys got off topic there, but it was a good fight. Scott, Brian, golf clap for both of you. Give you the Ted Sarandis round of applause. And again, folks, go badger both of these guys about their lists on Twitter.
Man, that was brutal, man. Like, are you kidding? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to talk about the guy when he's not on the show.
Yeah. So for those who are loyal fans of the show, I was messaging Brian Harrington, our producer there, during that, and that felt an awful lot like Lazar Steigerwald on greatest quarterback of all time when old crusty John Steigerwald was saying you can't have a greatest quarterback of all time, but it's Terry Bradshaw.
Oh my God! Oh.
The famous drop. I'm old, well, I'm young. Between Steigerwald and Lazar felt an awful lot like the size doesn't matter at the running back position that was going on there. So I had to hop and stop it. When pressed on the Falcons blowing a 28-3 lead, there was no answer. But you know what? Scott and Aaron do an awesome job on Falcon Central Radio. I'll give them that. Tuesday night, 9:30. They're good dude.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and see, like I even like volunteered to throw out the 3 Super Bowls, from 01, 03, and 04. I even threw those out, and we went forward just based on that. And I mean, I don't know, man. Some sour grapes down there in Atlanta these days, man.
I also think you criminally underrate Joe Montana, but let's
that's
not
a conversation for another day. You got to take a look at the numbers, brother. They're bad. They're no good.
I have seen the numbers, but I've also watched I've watched old 49ers games. He was insane. But again, we'll save that for another day because we're going to get back into
next offseason.
Yeah, next offseason. You'll hear that debate.
Yeah.
We're going to get back into Patriots Jaguars here, roar. So we have a game tomorrow, believe it or not. We just had our final offseason debate in the Phillips v. Karasik fight there. So going into the game tomorrow, Brian, Patriots, Jaguars, widely reported the Patriots are probably going to be running very thin at a lot of positions. Brady likely not to play. Gronkowski likely not to play.
Good.
Cooks, Edelman, Amendola likely not to play. Gilsley's definitely not playing. Hightower, Branch, all these guys, all the stars seem to be out for the Patriots after these joint practices. So who are you watching for in this backup-laden game?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, for guys like you and me, like that's fine. Like I'm totally fine with this because we were talking.
100%.
We were talking on Monday, and we'll get into it in a little bit about how, the length of the preseason. But yes, Gronk, I don't want to see you until September. Until the first game. What is it? The 7th. I don't want to see you until September 7th. I'd rather not see Tom until September 7th. Cooks, all of them, sit down. Enjoy the rest of the month. Get some reps in practice. We all know the joint practices are where it's at anyway. Those are where the guys are getting their main reps from working. So we get to see the real camp battles. And, there's never been a season where it's been this tight as far as down to the wire. 52 and 53 spots on the roster are jam-packed. And it's not just positional battles. It's multiple positions vying for those last couple spots. And a big one in that cluster of players between 50 and 60 for me is DJ Foster. I want to see if he can pick up where he left off last year. Looked great in the preseason. Everybody's been talking this offseason and training camp that he's still got that flash, that burst that he showed last year. That dual threat receiver running back that he was at Arizona State. I think you're cutting out a little bit there, Matt. But yeah, I mean, this is where these guys will be getting those big chunks of reps, and we'll see what he can do with them. But he's gonna. I mean, hopefully, he can force the coach's hands here. He's got the practice squad eligibility, but if he keeps balling out like he did last preseason, he gets cut. There's not going to be a very high likelihood he makes it on that practice squad.
So, sorry, I was cutting out for a second there. I think I'm back here.
Yep.
DJ Foster made a stupid catch in practice the other day. One-handed, tipped it up, caught it behind his head, tapped the toes, and got him in. I think Foster's a good guy to watch for. My guy I was going to look for was Shea McClellan, but looks like he got hurt because he's a big piece in the replacing Rob Ninkovich factor. And I'm going to call an audible here. In the pre-show talk, I said Lawrence Guy was going to be my guy to watch. I have somebody a little different and somebody who I think really need to keep an eye on and has kind of flown under the radar in Cyrus Jones. Cyrus Jones in his second year, Patriots top overall pick last year at number 60. And he's been okay. He had a terrible first day camp. He had 2 fumbles, 1 on a punt, 1 on a kick, and he got burned consistently by Brandon Cooks. Now we look, and everyone has really. But Cyrus Jones has started to compete a little bit here at corner. Forget punt return, kick return, because punt return, he hasn't muffed one in, I think, about a week, handling almost exclusively punt return duties. He hasn't been back there too much on kickoff, but I think that's a Dion Lewis role for this season anyways. I think if he can go out there and, he's not facing elite corners, or elite receivers, excuse me. But if he can go out there and he can look like an NFL player, if he can look like any semblance of the player he was good. If he can be good in this preseason game, I'm going to be very pleased because he hasn't been good yet in his career. If he can be good in a game, it's a step. And I'm going to keep a close eye on him. I think he's a guy that you may or may not see an article next week or later in the week on Pro Football Central.
Yeah, I love that pick, man. Because you're right. I mean, imagine what Cyrus Jones working out as a player would do for this roster from a depth perspective. I mean, from everything he can provide from an athleticism standpoint. But yeah, you're right. We need to see it on the field. I guess, you can get healthy by going up and balling out against guys like, Brian Walters and Aurelius Ben. But yeah, I love every report I've heard the last couple of weeks I've read has been him. He's a little pissed off, he's a little feisty, he's a little fiery. And you know what? Good. If that's what you need to kind of light the match under your ass and get going, I'm all for it, man. And you know what? Maybe DJ Foster can take some of those kick return roles for you, But
yeah, he hasn't been there yet. It's been kick return has been Dion Lewis, and Dion Lewis has been damn good. We haven't really had a chance to touch on some of the other stories in camp. I'll just throw this out here quickly. Dion Lewis has been damn good. He looks like the guy that was cutting people out of their shoes in Dallas. And If
You
he
realize
can
how
be
scary
that
that
player
is?
and you have
That is so scary. Like, with this
your
offense.
number 4 running back as a guy who started in the NFL and played quite well on a team that made an AFC championship game run, and he'd be the number 4 running back. But, the running back position, it's a wealth of riches because Rex Burkhead has been really good. And I think that you might see the receiver depth shrink because of him, because he's been lined up outside. He's been lined up in a power back role, in a split back. He's been lined up everywhere on the field. Bill Belichick has found his new little gadget, his new toy, and his name's Rex Burkhead, but he still has his old toys in Deion Lewis and James White. So it's a wealth of riches back there.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were talking about with Jones, at Alabama, he was a guy who played with a lot of fire, and he was a guy who was kind of leaned on. He was a leader on that team, and when you're a leader at Alabama, you got to play with some edge. Nick Saban doesn't allow it any other way, and I think that he kind of lost that last year, just so dejected in himself, and he heard the media last year, and he decided to go into a shell rather than improve his play on the field. And if we can see him improve his play, it's only preseason, but it would be a big step forward. And Brian, something, I brought up injuries, and you brought up preseason games. And we're talking about joint practices. It seems like the NFL is finally starting to come to its senses a little bit on preseason. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell coming out and saying that it feels like the preseason's a little too long and that the league is considering cutting back to 3. Now, I know you personally think that number is still too high. You want to see it at 2, correct?
I'd like to see it at 1, to be honest with you. But I'm a realist here. Me being a realist. Yeah, right. But, I just don't see it's going to be give and take with the CBA and the NFLPA and the owners. It's always you give, if you're giving something up on one end, you're getting something on the other end. And, the NFL wants it at 3. That means they're going to want an 18-game season. I don't think that's a fair trade.
That's an inevitability in my mind, though. I think 18 games is happening in the next CBA because the players aren't willing to lock out. And I think that if you can clip some preseason games, that's the only way it's going to happen.
Right.
And
so you need to.
I don't think the players are strong enough to get down to 2. I think that they'll cave at 3 and then end up with an 18-game season, which NFL is the biggest bunch of hypocrites when they talk about player safety because they're going to add a full game, whether it be preseason or anything else. You're adding games, you're adding practices. They're a bunch of hypocrites when it comes to player safety, but I would love to see the preseason get cut down, and I know you would as well. What is your big reasoning on why you hate the preseason games so much?
Well, because I'm so blatantly biased for the players. That's why, Matt. Because we're all a lot of us are looking for the players in the NFL to strive somehow to get towards what they want to be kind of considered like NBA players and MLB players, and we know that's not realistic because of the game they play. There's the injuries and everything are so it's such a factor, and the career span is so short. The average career of an NFL player is about a little under 2.5 years. If you're giving up, an extra preseason game for a regular season game, that's not enough for me. I think you need to do it. If we know that the 18-game regular season is an inevitability, I think you need to drop down to 2 and give them an extra bye week as a respite for these players, because it's a long season, man. Especially the guys that the teams that get saddled with that week 5 bye. That's rough,
or the 4-year-old quarterbacks.
Right, and that's tough. And for a 53-man roster, and you only play 46 on game days. I think you need a little expansion there too. But then again, the more players you have on a roster, the more that money's getting divvied up, and the farther away you get from those NBA dream type salaries, which obviously aren't going to happen. But player safety, we all know that the NFL will put on a smile, but they won't put their money where their mouth is. And the fact of the matter is, and I talked about it on Monday with you and producer Brian, until we saw it in 2011 when the players went on strike and they were going to hold out, and everyone's gung-ho and everyone's behind the players, and we're behind the players, and we're behind the players, until us as fans started realizing that we're not going to get football anymore. And then we start, reading reports, and, fans are getting, a little fed up with, well, why are the players wanting this? And why are they wanting this? Why don't they just give in here and give in there? Next thing you know, it felt like the public sentiment was kind of against the players because why? Because we want our football. Well, until we don't want, until we're ready to give up watching some September football maybe for a little bit, and maybe only watching 12 games in a season because the league is actually getting it stuck to by the players on strike. Until we're ready for that and we stand behind the players as fans, it's not going to happen. They have no leverage.
We can be ready all we want. The players aren't. Richard Sherman has said it. The players need to start saving their money now. These players aren't ready. There's no way the players are going to get into the regular season without going in and making their money.
Right.
Some of these guys live paycheck to paycheck. And there's enough of them that the majority is going to rule out. It's what happened in the last one. You read the sentiment that the players were fine until right around this time. I'm not getting my paycheck. I'm not getting my training camp money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And then all of a sudden, in comes Robert Kraft, CBA, done deal. And now the players hate it again, just like the last one. They're going to hold out. We'll miss some training camp. But I firmly believe the players will never be strong enough as a union to hold out against these owners. And it sucks because there are some changes that need to be made, but they're not going to get made. Yeah, they're going to cut a game off the preseason. Yeah, they'll gain a bye week. They'll gain 5 or 6 roster spots.
It's nothing.
Thing that's going to help the players, though. They're not going to get more money out of this. If anything, they're probably going to get less. They're going to get guaranteed contracts, but it's going to be less money. That's going to be the give and take, and the owners win every time, unless the players sit out, and I just don't see the players sitting out. But I think we both agree. The preseason games suck.
Right.
There needs to be 2 of them, 1 to 2, and joint practices. The Patriots are trying to do as many joint practices as they can. Bill Belichick was on the forefront of this years ago, doing these joint practices with the Saints back then, and it was kind of unheard of. And now everyone's doing them with almost every opponent. Patriots are traveling, and they're doing a joint walkthrough with the Lions. They're doing joint practices with the Texans down at the Greenbrier where the Saints used to practice. And I just think that that's going to be that. That's
yeah, I'm gonna cut in here, Matt. We're losing you a little bit there, pal. But
sure of the
yeah, let me cut in here, but yeah. So to piggyback on what you were saying though, when you're talking about these joint practices and things, and ways we can get things that the players are going to be asking for.
Cut down, which is good, but
all right, you back?
I think I'm back here. Am I good?
I think you're back.
I don't know what's going on. My internet's not liking me. But so what I was saying is,
the wave,
joint practices are the current and the future of the NFL. We're going to lose preseason games, but at what cost for the players? The players are going to end up getting less in this next CBA, and it's going to be staggering. It's going to really, when we see what happens, it's going to be staggering.
Well, I think one thing, and when you talk to guys like Miguel Benzon, or there's a lot of good cap guys on Twitter. You talk about things that the guys are going to want coming up in this next CBA, the little things that can get done. There are some, they need, the first thing they need to do is raise this cash spending rule, where teams only need to hit an 89% cash spending rule in a 5-year window or a 3-year window. It really keeps teams from spending. They need to get more of that money into the pool for these players. So there's a lot of little things they can do, but like you said, until they have any leverage at all, with forcing the owner's hands by missing games, there's nothing we're going to be able to do. So, Matt, are you back? Are you locked and ready to go on this Vince Wilfork retirement, man?
I believe I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Well, in perfect time because we're going to be talking about one of the biggest, one of the baddest, one of the best defensive linemen to ever play for the New England Patriots. That is Vince Wilfork. In a ceremony today, he announced his retirement, officially becoming a Patriot, and it's welcome home for life is what the Patriots use for Vince Wilfork. We saw it with Ninkovich. The Wilfork one was a little bigger than the Ninkovich one. 13 years in the NFL, 11 with the Patriots, a true 3-4 nose tackle at one point, who transitioned to a 4-3 nose, 4-3 D tackle. He played 4-3 D end when he came into the league. Super Bowl champion 2 times, and a guy who just at every turn was a true Patriot. And he's going to be a Patriots Hall of Famer, no doubt. I believe it's 5 years. And
yeah, 2021. You're
going to see a big red jacket come his way. A 4 or 5 XL red jacket. The question is, and it's been debated a little bit today, is Vince Wilfork a Pro Football Hall of Famer? Is he a gold jacket guy? I say yes.
I got to say no. There's, they were talking about it again. We'll bring up PFW in progress again. There's so many names of guys in the league that were so good. Casey Hampton, Chris Jenkins, Jamal Brown, guys like this. Really Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowl, all pro guys that aren't in. Too one-dimensional. But you're right. From a true 3-4 nose, a one-gapper, to log 55, 60 tackles a year for 3 or 4 years like he did from that position while literally taking double teams every single play. He played so many plays on the other side of the line of scrimmage for as many double teams as he took. He let everybody do what they needed to do on that defensive front, in that front seven. He controlled everything. And obviously,
he's able to take his career to Vince Wilfork.
Right. Is there a more athletic, 340-pound guy? Bullshit. But pound for pound, he might have been the best athlete on the roster. The guy was awesome.
There was the rumor that Vince could beat Tom Brady in a 40-yard dash. I don't doubt it. At the very least, he'd beat him the first 20 to 25. Vince Wilfork was a really athletic guy, and you heard in the press conference today, Bill Belichick said, maybe a little bit in jest, because Vince had a nice smile on. Yeah. Never missed a weigh-in, never failed a conditioning test, came in as a true professional, a true Patriot, and, the reason I have him in, all right, a lot of these other guys, they don't have multiple Super Bowl titles. Wilfork has multiple. That's going to help him. That's a win in his category. They don't have the 50, 60 tackle seasons. They're down in the 30 to 40 range.
Right.
That's one for Vince. They don't have the backing of one of the more powerful owners in the NFL. People don't want to believe that's part of it, but count that up. And I don't think Vince is on the first ballot. Obviously not. He's a nose tackle. It's going to take him 10, 12, 15 years. It's going to be an Andre Tippett situation, I think. But when you look at it, he needs a guy in that room. And for those who don't know, there are people in the PFWA, Pro Football Writers of America, that meet and they discuss this. Peter King, prominent among those, and kind of your senior writers in every town. You have guys like Armando Salguero down in Miami. Ron Borges is the New England guy. And a lot of people don't like Borges, but he almost single-handedly got Andre Tippett in the Hall of Fame. And from everything that's come out of that room, he almost got Ty Law in this past time.
Yeah.
I think that at some point, whether it's him or whether you look at who the senior guy is going to be when he's gone, there's some good people out there who could fill in that role, but I think Ron's going to be there until the day he dies. Ron loves doing that stuff. There's no bigger Vince Wilfork fan than Ron Borges. He has wrote just volumes on Vince Wilfork, and I think that having a guy in the room like that can help him, can lay out how much he was loved by his teammates, how well he pushed the pocket, how well, he did against the run, how he changed the fortunes of guys around him. You look at when he came in, and you had a line of Seymour, Wilfork, Warren. And he allowed Seymour, and yes, Seymour was already a ridiculous freak athletic player. He allowed Seymour to take it to the next level because he took on those double teams. And having that and having a guy in the room, I just think that it's going to take some time, but he'll eventually get in a class like what you had this year. A weak, kind of lackluster class that I don't think everybody should have been in. You'll get Vince Wilfork in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Long after he's due, but he'll be in.
Man, I hope you're right. Oh my God, that would be just an awesome speech, And plus, it's great content for us Patriots guys. But you'd love to see everybody kind of come out and support him. First of all, love to see what that jacket size is. But
6XL.
And something tells me, it's going to take a while. If it were to happen, it would take a while. But then it's tough to project who's going to be there when he's when these votes are coming around. Eventually, Tom Brady's going to be there, and he's going to pass him. He's going to get passed up by Tom, obviously. Unless Tom is still playing 10 years from now. Who knows? But it's going to be funny too. It's very doubtful that Vince is going to be It's not going to be a Nate Newton situation either with the Kingsford barbecue sponsorship and everything. I don't see Vince dropping a quick 80 pounds. No, it's not likely. But let's get into our favorite moments, man. Yours is obviously a legendary Patriots moment for Vince Wilfork moment.
Yeah, so we'll wrap with this here, kind of talking about Vince. And mine, what better than sitting at home on a Thanksgiving night, seeing the Patriots beat the bag out of the Jets, and Vince Wilfork takes Brandon Moore, grabs him, shoves him back into Mark Sanchez's face, and forever we have the butt fumble. Vince Wilfork made that play. He took Brandon Moore and threw his ass into Mark Sanchez's face and into the ball. Steve Gregory picked up the ball and ran it in, but Vince Wilfork caused the butt fumble. And it's just, he then won one of the players of the game. He got the turkey leg, and he had like half the turkey he was holding in his hand and ripped that sucker apart. Tom Brady took a little dainty bite. Vince Wilfork almost ate the whole turkey in one bite, but the butt fumble is it for me. Coming in a close second was the interception against San Diego, where he perfectly read a screen and ran all the way down the field, and Devin McCourty nearly killed a man by blocking in the back. Close second, but the butt fumble wins out.
Yeah, for me, obviously, those are two awesome moments. Butt fumble will live forever in Thanksgiving infamy, and Patriots infamy. But for me, it was going to be that interception. But then it also came in. Another one that popped into my mind was that interception against the Raiders to steal that game in 2014 when they got off to that slow start. It was the week before the Tom Brady's career was ending in Arrowhead. They had a tough matchup, a game that they were supposed to really take it to Oakland, and Oakland played them tough. Khalil Mack, the rookie Khalil Mack, made his presence known in Foxborough that day, and it was a nasty game, and it ended up being a Vince Wilfork interception to end it. But for me, the moments that I'll remember for him are the biggest one will be him playing basketball on Hard Knocks in overalls. It's unforgettable. Kicking, punting, doing field goals in overalls. And then a moment that was really made me happy as a Patriots fan was in 2015 when Malcolm Butler made that interception and beat the Seahawks in Super Bowl 49, and Vince got that second ring. Man, really cool to kind of bookend his Patriots career. We forget he was on that line with Keith Traylor in 2004, and that's a lot of beef up there, or a lot of turkey, and he got that ring as a rookie, and then capped his Patriots career with another one. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and Vince is the guy who's going to always be around the Patriots. He and Robert Kraft have a very special relationship, as they went over today. When Myra Kraft died, Robert Kraft revealed today Vince Wilfork had a locket made with their wedding picture on it and said, "Always cherish love, Vince." And, it's that kind of guy that he's the guy who's always going to be a Patriot. No matter what. No matter where he went, he's always going to be a Patriot. Yeah. And Patriots fans were lucky to have such a good guy around, and he'll be around. And, maybe we could figure out a way to get into that Kingsford barbecue before the season opener and talk to Big Vince. We'll try to do that for you. But Brian, we have football tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. WBZ here in the local area. Dan Roach going to call the game. Patriots, Jaguars. Some last minute stuff here. Where can people follow you for your game reaction and breakdown? And what do you have before the game?
Yeah, patspulpit.com like normal. Been a little light this week with the move to the Detroit area. I'm back in the Eastern time zone for you guys. But yeah, patspulpit.com. We continue in the positional series this week, obviously providing content with the breakdown of tomorrow's game. And then moving forward, I'll be in the house week 3 in Ford Field, breaking down week 3 of the preseason matchup against the Lions, which I'm really excited about. But yeah, at bphillips_pp on Twitter. Yeah, check it out.
So for me, Matt_Lapan, Lapan. I had my first in a weekly series of interviews with Cortland Sutton, #1 wide receiver in college football. Dropped today on Pro Football Central. I'm going to have reaction to the Patriots game, good, bad, ugly, whatever it is. I'm going to have reaction, some of my takes from the game. Follow me on Twitter. I'll be in the stadium, tweeting throughout the game. Pre and post game on Patriots.com. I helped produce that, so check that out. Big Jim Murray, along with Andy Hart and Paul Perillo, for those Boston fans. And then on Saturday, I'm going to be heading down to New Bedford, Massachusetts, taking in Odie-Palooza. Brian Harrington, take it away. Give us the final details.
Odie 2.
The Patriots, Steve Nelson will be there.
That's right.
All right, everybody make sure to check that out. Odie-Palooza 2 down in New Bedford. You can check it out. Odie's Place Animal Rescue. Brian does a great job there. And again, we have football. So next week we're going to be breaking down Patriots-Jaguars. We're going to be previewing another football game, Patriots-Texans. So for Matt Lapan, Brian Phillips, Brian Harrington behind the glass, we want to thank you all for tuning in.
Thanks, Scott Karasik,
for getting on there. He and Brian will continue to fight on Twitter. You can check that out there, and make sure to check us out next week here on Patriots.